you can't do one overnight, and you can't do one with no skill. They take months, they take years. And I wish more people gave them a bit of a go. Hi, I'm James Foley. My new picture book is called Bigfoot versus Yeti, a love story. It's out with Fremantle Press from the 1st of March. Bigfoot versus Yeti is about a clan of Bigfoots and a clan of Yetis who live on either side of a great rift. And they have been enemies for as long as either of them can remember, though they disagree on the exact reasons why. And the story is about the possible end to the rift. A young Bigfoot and a young Yeti on either side decide to find the end so that they can actually fight it out and see who wins. But it doesn't end quite the way that they expected it to. I'm both the author and illustrator of Bigfoot versus Yeti, and mostly when I'm working on a book, I get the initial idea as some sort of image, a scene from a book or a character. And then it's a matter of sort of refining some of those images, doing lots of character sketches until ideas for stories start to click into place. Then I brainstorm what's going to happen in the story. And I don't write until I know what the ending is. So I bullet point the entire story, all the beats that are going to happen, rearrange it, give it time to percolate. And when I've collected enough ideas, then I can start writing it down, and then I can do my proper illustrations. In Bigfoot versus Yeti, I used an unusual illustration technique. It's a digital version of lino cut. So lino cut is a printmaking technique. If you're familiar with it or not, usually you get a piece of lino and you might draw your design onto it, and then you use little carving tools to carve out the sections of negative space where you don't want the image to be. Because then you're going to put ink over it and you're going to press it down onto paper, or press paper onto it, and then your paper will reveal the image. So rather than doing any of that cutting and inking, because I just knew it was fraught with danger, I might cut myself, I needed to be able to do the book quickly, I did a digital version of the same thing. So I started with a dark grey image, and I did my quick sketch onto it. And then some clever person had designed some lino cut kind of brushes for this drawing program called Procreate. So when you use them, they're pressure sensitive and they come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, just like lino cut tools. And so then I would just do the same thing and just cut out all the negative space in the illustrations, but doing it digitally. So just using the brush to just cut around all the parts that would end up being black. And then you still get those lovely little artifacts, the little smudges and little extra bits that just show up. You still get all of that. And there's even some lino brushes they designed where you can then roll the black onto the image and it will show up with pressure sensitivity. Maybe some little white flecks will appear where you haven't pressed hard enough. So all those same little weird happy accidents you get with real lino cut, you can still get in this digital process. It's just, you're using an iPad in front of the TV. So it has all the benefits of lino cut and none of the downside. With this book in particular, it started off actually with an idea for a character who isn't in the book until the very end, and I can't talk about that because of spoilers. But her existence then was predicated on, well, there must be some Bigfoots and there must be some Yetis, and if you're going to make a story, it's always got to have some conflict. So I started thinking, well, okay, maybe they don't like each other. And then the more I thought about that, the more I thought, well, okay, how would that even work? How would you sort of separate their two very different environments that we associate them with, sort of forests of the Pacific Northwest and Himalayas? And what could be interesting about what's in between that? You couldn't just have it meet each other because then they would just be fighting all the time. It's more interesting if there is a separation, if there is a rift, physical and metaphorical. And then they can be angry at each other from across the rift, but they're never actually meeting until the point that this story happens. So it was kind of just a logical kind of clicking into place, starting from one little idea and going, well, how can I actually make this work as a story? I think with this book, it probably has quite a wide possible readership because people can access it on a number of levels. It can just be an ordinary bedtime story for little kids and families to enjoy. But it can also be a book that older people can read, that older students can read, to nut out the deeper issues, to talk about the visual literacy that's involved. So it's a bit like my earlier book, Stellarphant, in that there is quite a broad sort of readership. There's levels of meaning in there if you care to look for them, but there's also, hopefully, a nice surface level story to read. This is not my first book. It's my 20th, 21st. I'm not sure. I haven't counted it. And it's getting a little bit busy at the moment because I'm working on multiple books and multiple books are coming out. And so I've kind of lost count at the moment. My very first book came out in 2011. It was written by Norman Jorgensen. I illustrated it. It's called The Last Viking. And since then, I've worked on picture books that other people have written, that I've written. I've worked on graphic novels that I've written and illustrated, and about 7 of those. And I've illustrated some junior fiction as well. So it's been really, really fun career so far. And next I'm working on a non-fiction. So, I'm trying to do as many different things as I can. I am a full-time writer and illustrator. I fit it around family, and I have young kids at the moment. I have a wife, I have a dog. So I'm trying to, fit it around all of those things, school pickups and drop-offs. It helps to be flexible. It helps to be not too fixed on how you think things should be, and to be able to move your schedule around, which is not how I was when I was younger. I've had to learn how to do that, just sort of out of necessity. I have a studio at the back of a bookshop in Fremantle in Western Australia called the Paperbird Bookshop. It's a beautiful children's specialist bookshop. And it's really nice being at the back of a bookshop and seeing all the ins and outs of how that customer-facing side of the industry works. So I really admire booksellers, and I understand the pressures that they are under as well. So I really appreciate their time. Are you a cat or dog person, or neither? I've always had pet dogs. I love dogs. There's a beautiful dog sitting behind me here, Irish Wolfhound, stretching out. Oh yes, we're talking about you. But I don't hate cats. I love cats when I meet them. I love all animals, really. When I meet pets and things, I just, I want to pat them all, really. As a children's writer, we have an important role. We are creating books that will not only hopefully encourage children to develop a love of reading just for the pleasure of it. We are also making books that families, caregivers read with children, which is helping children not only to read, but also creating bonding moments, which are really important. Moments for attachment between families, between caregivers and children. We are also creating things that will hopefully teach kids nice, useful morals. The most important one in any book is empathy for people that are different to you, for learning to walk in other people's shoes, in my opinion. And I think that's been backed up with some studies too. Can't mention them off the top of my head. But yeah, it's really important that we read about other people and their lives, other situations, even if it's an elephant who goes to space, even if it's Bigfoots and Yetis, because these stories are teaching us things about how to be human and how to get along. No one's making children's books about how to be a bully and how to be nasty. And if they are, they're not going to sell very well. In today's world then, in 2025, when the day we're recording this towards the end of March, the world is getting scarier. And there are forces in the world that don't want us to be friendly to each other, to put it naively and simply. It's really important that artists, writers, everyone else are making art that is trying to help people see the way that the world could be. I love reading picture books with my kids. I love reading non-fiction, particularly with my son. He's a huge fan of non-fiction. And that's one of the reasons why I'm working on a non-fiction at the moment. I really got into them and I realized how much I love them and how fun it would be to make one. I love reading graphic novels and comic books is kind of seen as kind of a lesser term for graphic novels. I don't mind, as long as it's sequential storytelling. I don't mind if it's highbrow or lowbrow, if it's non-fiction, fiction. I love comics. They're awesome. Sapiens is a great series I've been reading in graphic novel. It's so fascinating. I feel like my mind is blown every single time I read it. I've read it multiple times now. What else? I read far too much social media and far too much news. I need to put the phone down in the evenings and actually pick up some of the books on my bedside reading pile, which is just multiplying in the corner. It's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So yes, I have a lot of reading to catch up on, actually. The picture book that I remember the earliest having an impact on me, it was two. It was Sunshine and Moonlight by Jan Ormerod. They were released 82, 83, so just around the time that I was born. And they're wordless picture books. And they're essentially really little comics. They're graphic novels for kids because they're just telling the most simple stories about morning routine and evening routine, and you can just put all the words that you want to them. So before I could read these books. They were great. And then the next one that I remember having a real huge impact was The 11th Hour by Graham Base. It came out when I was maybe 10 or 11, and the complexity of the illustrations and the puzzles, I was just blown away that you could make a book that was this detailed, that was this in-depth, that so much love had gone into it. Animalia as well, of course, by Graham Base. And then after that, the next ones that really, really had an impact were all the books by Sean Tan that he was illustrating. Sean Tan grew up in Perth, like me, and so I was getting to see a lot of exhibitions of his original artwork at the Literature Centre in Fremantle, which is like 5 minutes drive from my house. So I could just see the Red Tree, the originals, The Viewer, The Lost Thing. I got to see all these things played out and attend talks by Sean and get to hear him talk about his inspirations and his process and everything. And I was just like, I know I could never do something like that, but I never knew you could do things with picture books like this. I realized that there was so much more scope there, that you could make really funny animal fart books, and you could also make really, really amazing pieces of art that have stuff to say about the world. I try to do a bit of both in my stories. I try to do some comedy, and I try to do some stuff that speaks more to the heart as well. Graphic novels or, comic books have been looked down upon for quite a while, probably because their earliest incarnations that we're familiar with, the 30s and 40s, very cheap paper, very cheap to buy, storylines and art that maybe didn't have what was seen as the most effort put into it or whatever. That's not to say that it wasn't. There's amazing stories from that time, and from on, I love superhero stories. They've got lots to say about the world as well. And they're evergreen, they're beautiful. Then later on, we had people like Will Eisner came along, started trying to use this medium to tell more in-depth stories. People like the guy who did Mouse, Art Spiegelman. These are people who are coming along and saying, you can do more with this as well. It's something that should have more respect. I think maybe people who diss graphic novels just haven't really read them before. Because, you don't just diss film as a medium. You go, yeah, there's some that I like and there's some that I don't. Graphic novels are another medium, and there's so many types of stories you can tell. You can have graphic novels for kids. You can have graphic novels for teenagers, for older readers. You can have graphic novels for queer community and all communities. You can have graphic novels that are non-fiction and fiction. And it's such an accessible medium. And it's very similar to film. It's just like film on the page. There's so many generic conventions that are similar between the two mediums. So much effort is put into them. I know myself from making at least 7 graphic novels that you can't do one overnight, and you can't do one with no skill. They take months, they take years. And I wish more people gave them a bit of a go, because maybe they just haven't found the graphic novel that really, touches them, grabs their interest yet. I'm working on 4 books this year. I'm working on Walker Books is doing a new series called Paw Prints, which is junior fiction illustrated. It's really exciting to be part of it. I'm illustrating one written by Nathan Luff. It's called Fuzzball, and it's about a boy who he wants a dog, but he's given a guinea pig instead, and he hates it. And that's going to be out next year. I'm working on sequel to Happy Berry Capybara with Scholastic, which will be out later this year. I'm working on a picture book with Penguin about onomatopoeia, which will be out next year sometime. I'm working on this non-fiction book, which is a follow-up to Stellarphant. So it's about animals that have gone into space in real life. And we don't have the exact title yet. It's going to be out in August next year. And it's based on that very last section in Stellarphant where it shows animals who've really been to space. So we're expanding that into a 160-page non-fiction book. And after that, I don't know, I'm working on a picture book with my wife, trying to get other things off the ground. There's always more ideas. It's just, there's never enough time. So apart from the ones that I'm working on, there's also 2 new graphic novels coming out this year. When I say new, they're colour re-releases of things that I had out earlier. So one is Dungzilla, which is a Sally Tinker story, and that is out in its colour edition 1st of April. It includes a story at the back that wasn't in the original, so an extra story. And then in June, the colour re-release of Chickensaurus is out as well, which is also with Sally Tinker. That's like Jurassic Park, but with chickens. It's very silly. There's a Chickensaurus Rex and Velociroosters and lots of silly chicken animal dinosaurs running around. Yeah, they'll be out. And then the Happy Berry Capybara sequel out in November. No worries. Thanks for having me.